So let's talk about the Eddie Van Halen vault. If you have heard anything about this, you know that Eddie Van Halen just recorded an incredible amount of music in his 5150 studios. There are clips on YouTube you can see where Eddie gives a tour of 5150 and he shows the vault, and it's an entire wall of reel-to-reel tape, and the wall is enormous. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of Eddie's music there. The problem is all of the music was indexed on a Radio Shack computer in the studio. In other words, all of what was on each tape was stored on the computer, and the computer itself went down and couldn't be recovered. The hard drive completely fried. So now nobody really knows what's on any of the tapes. And to find out what's on any of the tapes would require sitting down and listening to hundreds and hundreds and thousands of hours of Ed in the studio. So when I hear that there's thousands of hours of material in 5150 studios that Eddie Van Halen recorded along with Don Landy, who was his sidekick engineer that stuck with him basically through everything he did, I get extremely excited, and I think of all of the incredible music that might be down there that we haven't heard. We could get maybe 5 or 6 entire albums worth of material, and if there's anything I'd like to hear right now, it's an album chock full of great Van Halen music. But there's a couple things I think we need to keep in mind when we consider the vault. And the first one is it's very unlikely that anyone's going to sit down and go through all of that material to find out recorded materials that could be made into usable songs. There might be some almost finished demos even on there, but finding them in the sea of material without any guide whatsoever, without that Radio Shack computer, is just going to be a nightmare. And it's not likely that anyone's going to feel up to doing it, or even if someone wanted to do it, they're not going to have the access to the material. So we're looking at Wolfgang Van Halen basically as the custodian of all of this. The second problem, I think, is that even if there's good stuff in the vault, even if there's half-finished demos or three-quarter finished demos or almost completed songs, it's still not going to be Van Halen. You still don't have vocalists to go over the top. You're still not going to have the band in its prime. You're still not going to have all of the elements that went into making Van Halen's music what it was during their heyday. At best, what you're going to get is a souped up relic that's been heavily treated in the studio and combed over. I think we have a bit of a precedent for all of this with the Jimi Hendrix stuff. When Hendrix's material finally got settled out of copyright lawsuits and Al Hendrix was ready to get down into what was available of Hendrix's material and put out some new stuff, there really wasn't a lot there, and what they did manage to cobble together is not nearly as memorable as what Jimmy did when he was alive and kicking, and that's to be expected, and there's no shame in that, and it's good that they went in to try to find as much as they could. Now with Hendrix, there wasn't that much to go through, and the process was more about getting a usable final product than it was deciding which thing to work on. With the Van Halen vault, it's going to be exactly the opposite. You're going to have to go through a sea of material to find the likely few demos and polished materials that could be made into something. The problem then is, what are they going to be made into without the rest of the band and the rest of the apparatus that went around Van Halen in its heyday? And then the third thing that I want to mention in this connection is the Different Kind of Truth album, which likely has old songs that were stored in the archive that were brought out to make that album. They probably went through and found some of the good stuff and used it for their final studio album. So my feeling is it's cool to think that there's probably a lot of great unreleased Van Halen music that could come out, but I really don't think that's the case. I think that basically we're not going to get anything out of there. Maybe 1 or 2 songs will trickle out, but I seriously doubt it. And, thank God the existing Van Halen albums are so good and we can go back and listen to those. That's what I think. What do you think? If you have a comment on this or any other issue connected to classic or contemporary music, please leave a comment in the section below and like and subscribe. Thanks a lot.